It's different.
Yeah, it's different. It's different. Yo, what's up, y'all? This is Anthony James with the Grindhouse Podcast. We got a special Wednesday episode that we're going to start doing each week. And our first guest of this Wednesday episode, I want to introduce him first. Today we're talking to Timmy Dick. He's a race car driver of Team 122 late model stock cars. I'm gonna find out what the heck that is. But we're gonna get to that. So, but Timmy's gonna be going to the Dome. I believe it's December 5th through the 7th in St. Louis. And I don't know if they still call it the RCA Dome. I don't know if they call it anymore. But
they call it the Gateway Dirt National, so I don't know if I'm assuming it's Gateway, but I don't know we just call it the Dome.
We call it the Dome.
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk to Timmy today, and get some insight on him, family, wrestling, and we're gonna see how wrestling and cars go together. We're gonna find all that out. So Timmy, what's up, man? How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. We just got back home from wrestling. We're doing some preseason training and stuff, and just got home. And we live kind of a pretty wild lifestyle. We got we're just busy all the time. That's all we do.
I would call it wild. So you got to tell me, all right, because I'm gonna start with wrestling. We'll get in the car because we're gonna talk about the Dome and talk about that. But how did you get into wrestling? One, and how did you? And I'm gonna introduce you here as well because you have a 13-year-old son.
Yep,
13-year-old son who is now wrestling. So I'm guessing you're coaching him. Yes. So how did your love of wrestling come about?
Man, my uncle wrestled in high school. Obviously much older than I was, and my dad would always really support my uncle with his wrestling. He'd just go to all his tournaments, all his meets. I mean, they'd drive everywhere for him to wrestle. And then I think I was probably 7 or 8. And we have, club team basically for kids at like a youth team. And my dad was like, "Hey, you want to wrestle?" And I was like, I don't know, sure, whatever, it's contact, and, so I started wrestling. I think I was in 2nd grade when I started. We went to signups and stuff. And, my sister actually wrestled too. Mm-hmm. My sister was 4 years older than I was. And we started at the same time. So she was a little bit older than I was. But man, it's something we started and we just never stopped. It just became, I'm not going to say it was 100% natural for us right out of the gate, but it was just something that really fit. Then all of a sudden my grandparents were coming, like they went and watched my uncle wrestle. My uncle was coming and watching me wrestle, and we went pretty hard for a long time. And we used to wrestle, obviously the season, the normal season was kind of like November through like maybe March is usually when state series. Then we got to where we were wrestling a lot in the summer too. And we just stuck with it. And I don't know why it is like the hardest sport. You
might be a crazy person. Let me go ahead and start talking because I've known wrestlers all my life, man. Like I grew up in Michigan, so obviously Illinois and Michigan, we're neighbors. But you got to be a crazy person to, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and I got to be in this position. All right, you got to, I've earned this, so you got to. Yeah, it is a dedication, it is a lifestyle. I think with wrestling more so than, and I feel like I guess I'm gonna ask this question: how do you equate racing to wrestling? Like how do they mix and match to you?
Man, they're so. I mean, obviously they're two totally different sports, but they're so similar in a lot of ways. Wrestling's you don't have. You got your teammates at practice and stuff like that push you. But when you're wrestling, it's just you out there. There's no help. It's just you. You win, you get all that glory. You lose, that's all on you. And racing's the same way. We got guys that help us on the car and sponsors and things like that. But when I'm out there, it's just me. Nobody can really help me, and if I win, it's great. And we celebrate as a team and a family and stuff like that. But if I lose or I screw up, don't win or just, have an off night or whatever, it's on me. I feel like, I never blame any of my guys for anything. If I lose a race or screw up and something happens, that's my fault, and that's kind of what wrestling is too. I feel like. And I honestly feel like they're very similar. They're hard on your body. They're hard on your mind. It's hard to stay motivated sometimes with both of them. It's wrestling's. There's wrestlers I think are always thinking about quitting and why am I doing this and why am I? But you just being a wrestler in your head, you just keep doing it. And it's like you just keep pushing on. So
with racing. Yep. And I was going to ask, like with racing, because obviously you brought up your family when it came to wrestling. Is that the same reason you got into racing as well, family?
Yep, absolutely. My grandpa started racing stock cars back like in the 60s and 70s, way before I was born. And back then racing was it was the same as far as you're going in a circle around a dirt track, but it was different. The cars have evolved a ton since then. He used to race like Chevelles and 57 Chevys and things
Oh
like
wow.
that. And they were gearheads. They were just gearheads that would just build whatever. And like I said, he raced in the 60s and 70s, which it was expensive back then too to race. And he had 4 kids. And my grandma told him, she gave him the ultimatum, and she said, we got to feed the kids or feed the race car. So he sold the race car. And so my dad always tells the story. He cried when they sold it because my dad just loves racing. I mean, he just breathes it, lives it, And so then it was, quite a while, went all the way through the 80s and early 90s. And then my dad and my uncle started racing like mid 90s, 95, 96, around there. Of course, then that put me in it, which at the time I was a kid, 8 years old. I loved it, obviously. And then I always wanted to race my whole life. I mean, when I was a kid, that was all I wanted to do was race, because I thought it was so cool. And but we just didn't have the money. We were, we weren't dirt poor. But we just weren't wealthy enough to do it for me, because at that point, to get a kid into racing was a lot of money, and you had to travel and stuff like that. And we just didn't have it. We worked for everything we had, and that was good enough for us. And for my, I kind of started dabbling in. I got 16. I got in hot lap and practice and stuff like that. And then I actually my dad gave me one of his old cars for my graduation present.
Oh, wow.
So that was my first race car when I graduated high school. But I raced a little bit my junior year, and between my junior and senior year, not much. And then pretty much after I graduated, it was on from there. And I've been racing ever since. And then now my son's 13, and he's already been racing 7 years. So it's
so
just
what you're telling me
nonstop.
is that you are fourth generation. You have a 4th generation of racers in your family right now.
Yeah.
So from your learning, being with your dad, falling in love with it, always wanting to do it. What was the moment that your son came to you? Did he come to you and say, "Hey, Dad, I want to race," or was it something kind of just like, "Hey, he's seen you doing it," and kind of fell into it?
My son, I'm telling you, he's been going to the track since I don't even remember. We probably got a picture of his first time at the racetrack. I guarantee you my wife's got it somewhere. That kid, since he was old enough to know what was going on at the races, because you bring little kids, they don't quite understand it. I mean, this kid was 3 years old and was just, that is all that kid has ever. I mean, he wants to do a lot of things. He plays baseball. He wrestles. He's a really good wrestler. We're really serious into wrestling. He played a little bit of football. But racing is just, he would sell his soul right now to race for the rest of his life. Like he's that into it. And he's always been, even when he was a kid, he was probably 5 years old, and he's not running around playing with kids at the track. He's watching the races. And that's how he's learned so much, is just by watching and listening. And that kid breathes, right? He breathes more than I do. I guarantee it.
Passion. It seemed like a passion to him.
Yes. Yep.
So knowing that it's a passion for him, how do you, because here's what I learned with training my son. Like I said, my son is a college football player.
Yep.
So here's the things that I learned with training him, is being able to sometimes pull back from it being a passion, where it feels like still a passion and work at the same time. You get the work in, but you want to still make sure that he still enjoys it. So how do you keep him with just enjoying the work that goes into it?
Oh man, my son's a rare breed. He's a lot like me in a lot of. I mean, when I was growing up, like I said, we didn't have a lot of money, and I know I watched my dad, my uncle, and every man in my family. I feel like I watched them work for everything they had, and so I always knew the value of a dollar growing up. I always knew that you had to earn what you got, whether it be physical work or whatever. You earn what you get in everything. Wrestling, football, racing, your job, whatever. If you want to get something good, you got to work for it. And so I was always like that growing up. And Hudson's, man, that kid wants to work. He works with me during the summer in my business. Like he'll come, he wanted an iRacing rig for Christmas, and which is like a simulated, they race online and stuff like that. It's real expensive. And I told him, I said, man, you want to race, or you want an iRacing deal? I said, you're going to have to pay for part of it. And so he worked all summer, and he paid for $1,200 of his own money to buy his own iRacing rig. He races upstairs online. He races in the off season all the time. It's probably what he's doing right now, honestly. But it hasn't become a job to him because he still goes to school. He's still a kid. Still try to let him be a kid. I mean, he does work on the car. There's a lot of things we kind of do for him just so he can still be a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But that kid, I'm telling you, he knows that he has to have a good job. He knows he's got to have good sponsors. He's got to have good people behind him. But most important, he knows he's got to work hard in order to do it. And he hasn't gotten that point yet to where he's never wanted to not work on it. You know, if I say, hey, we got to go down and wash tires and get stuff ready, he's right with me. He'll spend the whole day with me, working right beside me. But we do try to do a lot for him, especially my dad, just so he can still be a kid and enjoy. You know, but he doesn't live a normal lifestyle.
No, there's ain't nothing normal about what you're talking about right now. 13-year-old racer and things like that, especially in the ages that we live right now, where everything like with you when you probably started racing, I'm guessing you're probably somewhere around the same age as me when you're starting, and you have essentially it's just you and the track and the guys that are there, and you may get some local closed TV and things may see it and things like that. Your son's in a different era of when it comes to everything's at their fingertips.
Yeah.
So he gets, so critiques at a younger age and people looking at him from all over the world, getting fans at a younger age. So how do you balance that in this era for him as a dad?
Man, it's tough because he's a good kid. I mean, he listens, he works hard, he gets straight A's in school. You know, and that was kind of Mama's deal. I mean, I think school's important. Don't get me wrong, but that was, he's got to get straight A's or he can't race. Kids that straight A's his entire life. And now he is way not like he gets that from his mom, not me. I didn't. That comes from that side for sure. But he just I don't know. He's his own type of person, and all he wants to do is race. He wants to be a professional racer. I had dreams when I was younger too. At that age, I probably wasn't thinking of being a professional race car driver at that age. I was thinking, man, I want to go play football for, Illinois, or I want to go wrestle for Iowa or Penn State or, things like that. And those were kind of my dreams, which are, my goals or dreams, or whether they're reality or not. I was not big enough to play college football, I wouldn't even, but he's got a realistic dream. He's got a realistic goal. You start these kids out this young, and that's why we're doing what we're doing, because it's really tough for somebody to just jump in, in their 20s or 30s. 20s not so much, but like if you can get a kid started racing younger, that just is going to really help the opportunity for him to get noticed quicker.
And I guess it's a lot like we are when it comes to training, where you have it's muscle memory throughout all the years of different things like that, where you have people who will ask you, and it's not a disrespectful thing, but it's just people who will say like, oh, wrestling, racing is a sport, and people same way people do it with horse racing and things like that, where they're not thinking of the control that you have to have, not just control, but and I'm sorry if I'm kind of bad.
No,
you think about just being able to just do things and your peripherals and being able to do your eyes, and just people don't understand the amount of practice that it takes just to train your mind.
Yes.
So for you, I'm going to talk about you now. And when it comes to this, what makes you keep? Because obviously your dad, your husband, a business owner. What makes you still want to keep going and still keep, you still have that passion to keep doing this?
Man, it's tough. It's just because I love the sport so much. It's like you said, I tell people all the time, and like you always say, it's not a normal lifestyle what we do. I mean, there is a lot of people that race, but it's not normal. It's so much heartache. I mean, like I say, it's a lot like wrestling. It humbles you, and it's a lot of money. It's a lot of time. There's times that we miss, I've missed birthday parties. I've missed weddings. I've missed a lot of things so we can go race, and it's just something we love. It's part of who we are. And a lot of people think racing, and it drives me nuts, but they call it a hobby, and it's not a hobby.
You live it. You live it every day.
Yeah. My wife used to joke around because she knows it really pisses me off when people call it a hobby. And we went to go meet with a tax guy, like it's been 5-10 years ago, and we were talking about the income I had from racing and spending and stuff like that. And he was like, "Well, we classify that under a hobby." And I was just, my blood was boiling, and she's just looking at me smiling, because she knows I want to like choke this guy. But it's a wild sport. I mean, I just try to. My motivation's still there. I had to, my whole time. This is how stupid I am. I traded my very first truck I sold my very first truck to buy my very first engine for my race car.
Wow.
At 17 or 18, however old I was. It was my very first truck. I sold it because I found a good deal on an engine. And then I had to borrow a truck and a trailer.
Now you have to borrow a truck to get the engine on.
But yeah, so I mean, that's how invested I've been in it since even a young age. I mean, that I've paid for everything. I mean, I kind of paved my own way. I do drive for a guy now. We're kind of 50-50 on the car now. For a while, I just drove for him, which I earned that right to race for him, and I've worked really hard, and I've kind of, anytime I was like, man, I just don't think I can do this. I've always found a way to make it happen, and so it's, the older I get, I mean, I'm 36 and I'm still very motivated because I just jumped up into the super late model class, which is like, the top tier class. So I still got some things I want to do and try to do. But honestly, I'm in the back of my head right now. We're prepping more for my boy for down the road, just because I think, he's got way more of a chance to do something big, and so I still stay motivated because I love the sport. There's sometimes, believe me, there was a time last year we were racing at Fairbury Speedway, and I was in the pits, and I just remember in the car or getting ready to roll out for the feature. I was like, God, I'm just about tired of this. I'm tired of work. I'm tired of the money. I'm tired of the heartache. I'm tired, because I jumped up to a class where I'm racing against sometimes 10 times the money, and it's tough. It's really tough. And then we get out on the track and we roll into a 4 wide deal, like a salute to the fans or whatever before a big race and all this. And I was like, I love this. I love it. I was right. I literally went from I'm about ready to be done to there's no way I can stop this. It's just
all in a matter of probably hours too.
That was probably honestly like a half hour. I changed my mind. I went from I was ready to be done to, man, I just can't get enough of this. This is who I am, So
as a wrestler, and obviously with wrestling, you have to be in one, great condition physically, great condition mentally, the training that comes with it, the care of your body and things like that. How does that translate to to racing when it comes to training? So how does one take what you kind of learned with wrestling and equate that to training and racing? And what's some of those what's some things that I wouldn't know as a casual person who just turns on the TV and I see someone racing when it comes to that training?
It's, man, and a lot of people, unless you're in the car, you don't really realize kind of what all you're kind of going through, especially on a dirt track. I work out. Me and my boy work out. We work out here in the garage, and he's wanting to start hitting weights now. He's 13, so I was like, man, I need to start working out and getting in better shape. My job keeps me in pretty good shape, but now that we've started working out, I'm in better shape. But you do have to be in somewhat shape because you got to control your breathing when you're racing. Like you can't be holding your breath, but it's hard not to sometimes, But I mean, we're racing on tracks. Around here's a lot of 1/4 mile tracks. Like at the Dome, that's a 5th mile track, which is it doesn't sound like it would be that much smaller, but it's quite a bit smaller. And we race on one around here at Macon Speedway, and it's just a little bull ring. And these cars go so fast, the G-forces, I have no idea what they are, but it does things to your body when you're racing that you don't even, it's like, it sits you back in your seat. You race on rough tracks. I mean, we run full containment seats for a reason, because if we didn't, 5-point harnesses, Hans Weisses, our equipment's always top. It's got to be top notch, because you can get some nasty wrecks. You can flip. We bounce through holes and we'll stand the car up, and it's hard on your body. It's hard on your neck, hard on your back, your shoulders. So as far as being in shape, I don't know. I'm sure other guys probably do stuff to work it, kind of similar to what I do, just work out and try to stay in good cardio shape. Because, we raced like 100 lapper down at Macon Speedway, and we ran like 40 or 50 green in a super late model, and we had a caution. I was like, thanking God we had a caution. So I was like, oh, we can slow down for a minute. Cause like you got to try to relax, because you'll get arm pump, it's wild what goes on. And if you see a GoPro from inside a car,
Mm-hmm.
especially like a super late model, and I didn't realize how much I move around until my son got a GoPro,
And then you
and we
see
had
it
it in the
seeing
car,
all.
and it's just you're all. I mean, it's like. I mean, your hands are nonstop moving, your feet are going on the working the pedals, your head's bouncing around, and I didn't realize how much you actually really do move on some of these smaller tracks and stuff like that. But there's a lot of G forces too that, like I said, it just sets you back in your seat, and you got to hold on and keep racing. You know.
All right.
But,
So it's gonna be second time at the Dome. I know I'm getting close to time, so we're going second time at the
oh, you're
Dome.
good.
We'll kind of get to here. So, what are you looking forward to in this experience, the second time there, and what can you kind of predict for yourself when it comes to this race for yourself?
There is not one. The only thing you can predict at the Dome is that it's there's going to be chaos. I mean, it's such a small track, and like if you watch some videos and stuff on some highlight reels and stuff like that, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. But it's such a small track, and these cars are so big, and I mean, these cars have, you know, super late models have anywhere from 800 to over 900 horsepower, and you're putting that to dirt in a 2,300, 2,400 pound car. It's wild. I mean, it just anything can happen down there. I mean, you can destroy your car in a matter of seconds. You can have, but it is a race. They call it like the Equalizer. You know, there's a guy, Tyler Carpenter. They build race cars. They're You know, they race for a living, but they're not high dollar racers by any means. And he actually won it 2 years in a row.
Wow.
So that it kind of gives a chance to a lower budget race team like me, because it's more of there's a lot of luck involved. There's skill involved too, but there's a lot of luck involved, you know. But it just kind of takes away from those big $60,000 engines. You still got to have good shocks and, you know, a good car and stuff like that. But it kind of levels it out a little bit to where, you know, your local guys have a shot to beat those high end guys who race for a living. You know, and that's what I love about it the most but the only problem is it's only one time a year. So you got to wait 365 days if you screw up or get tore up until you can have another crack at it. You know, last year that was actually my first race in a super late model. So I went from racing a crate late model with 400 horsepower, and we put an open engine in with 800 horsepower and went racing on this tiny little track inside. So it was, and I did fairly well. Like, we were running good. We just had a guy got into us and flattened our tire in our heat, and that kind of just set us back for the whole weekend. But I'm looking forward to going back now that I've raced, you know, a whole season in the supers and learned a lot. I've learned a ton over the last couple of months. I think we'll definitely have a better shot at it. You know, my goal, man, if we could just make the show, that it would be all, you know, there's 150 late models down there, and I think they take 20 to the main, you know, so and that's in 100 out of 150 guys, there's probably 100 of them that race for a living, at least, you know, and then the rest of them are guys like me, kind of lower budget guys that just got in and want to go down there and give it a fighting chance. You know? But I'm looking forward to it because I know a lot more now than I did last year. But that doesn't make me any luckier, just because I know a little more, you know. So.
Listen, I think this is anything with what we do here, with what you're doing. As long as you get a shot, as long as someone gives you a chance, that's all you want is an opportunity.
Absolutely.
What you do with the opportunity is going to be up to you. But as long as you get the opportunity, that's going to be the important part. So
yeah.
So
it's a cool experience. There's nothing like it in dirt track racing. There's just nothing like it. It's you're racing inside. I mean, it's cold as hell here right now. We're racing in 2 weeks. You know, we're racing inside. They last year had record-setting crowds, and I'm pretty sure they're predicting to do that again this year. They sold the whole lower bowl area out last year. It was the first time they had to open up the upper, and there was a lot of people up in that upper area. I don't know how many people can fit in that place, but I know there is a ton of people there, and it's on Flow Racing is where it can be streamed on, and it's just a cool environment. You can feel the crowd when you're racing, even with 800 horsepower under your foot. You know.
Listen, Listen, I've gone to hockey games, so you know people always say hockey is one of those sports you can see. This is one of those things where I'm like, I need to go in person so I can kind of feel I can feel that energy, so I can,
Yeah.
because that's what I do want to go and be able to
Yeah.
feel that energy. So, I think, I think after we see what happens at the dome, I love to have you back here to kind of
Yeah.
just go through, and we can, we can talk about it, because I really want to see and have that feeling, and see, see that energy that you have here when it comes to it.
Yeah.
So
It might be a whole different me. It'd be a real sad me, happy, but it's that's what's cool about it. Only like we used to race this race, the Springfield Mile
Mhm.
here in Illinois at the fairgrounds, and it's a mile long track. It's the biggest track we ever race at,
Mhm.
fastest track we ever race at. But we only race there one time a year, so it's kind of like that. It's you get there's so much build up for that race,
Mhm.
and then you race it, and if you don't win it, it's like I got to wait a whole nother year to try that again. But that's what makes it so exciting. You know, if
Exactly.
we race the dome 4 or 5 times a
You
year,
wouldn't
probably be
appreciate
as
it.
excited. Yeah, right.
You wouldn't
And it's
appreciate it.
just it's nuts how you can feel the energy in that whole place. Like it's like no, and I've done a lot of crazy things. I mean, when I was done wrestling, I fought MMA and I fought some big shows where I thought like this is crazy, but I have never been at anything like the racetrack at the
Mhm.
dome and felt that type of intensity. It's nuts.
Well, I'm gonna end this there for now. I for real want you to come back afterwards.
Yeah,
and win, lose, draw, whatever goes on. I just want to hear about the experience.
yeah,
I'm gonna let everybody know that's listening. The December 5th through the 7th, Gateway Dirt Nationals at the Dome at the Americas in St. Louis. So if you're
yep,
in the Midwest, or if you're traveling to the Midwest during the time and you want something you want to go check this sport out.
yep.
Especially, so you can feel the energy, see what these athletes do on a day-to-day basis, and all that good stuff. I don't know how big you are on social media, but I definitely want to make sure that I plug you. So
Yeah.
you want to put all your social media website, let us know where we can find you at.
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, just Timmy Dick Racing. My son is Hudson Dick. He's got his own TikTok page, which is Hurricane HUD.
Mm-hmm.
He's usually on there. He's got a little more social media stuff than I do because he's good at it.
That's what they
So,
do, man.
but he's got a lot of followers, and
Mhm.
but yeah, you can reach us out on there, and we usually post updates and stuff like that. Like our preliminary night, we'll run on Thursday night.
Mhm.
Then we'll be off Friday, and then everybody's back racing on Saturday, trying to fight their way in. But it's a cool deal, and we'll be posting updates and stuff like that. And like I said, you can always tune in on Flow if you have Flow Sports. Flow Racing's on there. You can watch on there too, and it's definitely an event. If especially if it's your first race, it would be one to go to and check out because there's some crazy stuff that happens there, and there's the best drivers in the country, and I'm not one of them, but the rest of them, they'll be there. So
So Timmy basically saying that he's just gonna be there. Another guy. No,
yeah.
we're expecting good things, man. Well, listen, man, I appreciate you coming in and coming on and jumping on with us, man. This is new for me, something that I really want to experience, and I'm glad that we got this partnership kind of going on, and we're gonna,
Really?
we'll have a lot of this going on here, man. So, with that, guys, until next time, we'll see y'all.
All right, see you.
This is Terrell Washington. Thank you for tuning in to the Grindhouse Podcast. If you are enjoying our show, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our content on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube, and all other podcast platforms. Remember, you must grind to shine.